I would go to these parties where like the ultra rich, the wealthiest people in the world were. And I just remember sitting there and watching these people interact, and I could feel that there was just like such an emptiness to it. But then all of a sudden, I was thrown or dropped into this like hell realm. It felt like I could only feel the outside of my skin, and on the inside was like less than nothing. Darker than dark, emptier than empty, scarier than scary, like the most terrifying, horrible, empty, nothing feeling inside. I had just started believing there was a God, and I started crying out. All of a sudden, I hear what the Bible describes as a still small voice, and he goes, "This is waiting for you on the end of the path you are on."
It's a fall.
So we got
Not too bad. So obviously I randomly ran into you and asked if you want to do this. So
divine intervention.
yeah. I hadn't seen you probably 12 or 13 years, and so I knew you lived out of state, but that's why I was surprised to see you. So thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
to be here.
talking about your life and everything that happened. So how would you start if you were gonna tell your story?
Well, basically, I was raised in a Christian home, and my parents had originally been saved by Christ, obviously, but they went into like a more Pentecostal, spirit-led type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as my parents started having kids, they got more curious about the family-oriented churches and things like Bill Gothard and that whole movement. And somehow, I'm not sure exactly how they came across that church, Old Paths, that we both went to. And my dad was really attracted to the whole family thing and the music and how they got their kids to do all these things, you know what I mean? And so we up and moved. And I remember my dad even says to this day, he's like, when I went to do that, God opened all the doors, but it felt like God was telling me, like, you want to do that? Well, I'll teach you a lesson, you know what I mean? Because my dad didn't know what he was getting into.
Sure.
And so we went, and, at first it was beautiful, but as soon as you start getting into the culture there's more of a fundamental kind of thing. And I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I've learned over time that when you get too much in the fundamentals, instead of actually making it about approaching the presence of God, actually being with God, which Jesus said, he said that you sent me that they may know you and your son, and sent, like the whole purpose is knowing him. And at the end, he says, I'm going to say, I never knew you, or I knew you. Welcome into the joy of the Lord. You know what I mean? So it's really about, the point is about knowing him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, I just remember now, like, that church affected so much of the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like, so many of my friends to this day are from that church. It was very central to the way I ended up thinking, a lot of things that you don't expect, like wounds and certain types of teaching that just kind of get into your system that were taught as godliness, you know what I mean? And some of it was legit, and other parts of it were just kind of like focusing on outward appearance and outward stuff, which Jesus clearly said, if you clean the inside of the cup, the outside will be clean also, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I felt like I went out into the world not understanding some things that are so fundamental to the Christian faith, which is like actually understanding boundaries, because God is a God of boundaries, you know what I mean? Like throughout the whole Bible, he even talks about like how he set the boundaries of the water and the sand and said, don't come any further, you know what I mean? And then with right and wrong, it's like he has laws, and each law is a boundary. But like, I felt like in that church, it was about like breaking your will to just do whatever a leader says, instead of them pointing you towards God. It was more like pointing you towards leadership and obedience.
And trying to have a cookie cutter, everybody does the same thing, and that's just not how.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of pressing into God and finding out what gifts and talents your God has given you and your family, it would be like, this is what we're doing, like everyone has to do this, instead of,
Yep.
And it's like, it was all used with words of God, like, without a vision the people perish. It's like, it's important to have a vision, but it's like, God is so personal, you know what I mean? And it took me years to learn that. Like, I didn't know any of this right away. But because of the way I went out into the world and the way I struggled with the world so hard, like worse than worldly people, you know what I mean? Worldly people, I had to examine myself and look back at the things that I learned that were the opposite of what actually gives you the type of strength that can give you power to approach the world in a way that is not only godly, but like that works. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. So like, as you grew up, I know obviously I know a little of your story, but um, what started to, like, did you have self-control problems, or like what? Why did you go down the path that you went down?
I had so many self-control problems. I remember there are specific moments I remember, and I'm not going to name any names, but I remember being at like a conference with a bunch of the young kids from All Paths, and we were like, everyone was there to seek God, and there's a bunch of young kids there, and they're all dressed relatively modestly compared to like what Old Paths we call worldly people, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And there was an adult there from our church who whispered over our shoulder, was like, look at these sluts, blah, blah, like in their tight dresses, trying to be like the world and sinful and stuff. And like, we're like these 13, 14-year-old boys, like, we're not thinking about these girls as sluts, you know what I mean? Who are actually dressed modestly. So it's like, that alone to me, thinking back, like learning over time what that meant, what I realized was these men or these people who thought that way, especially with the problems that ended up arising with the church, with sexuality and self-control.
Yeah.
Those problems I realized stemmed from projecting your own self-control onto other people, relying on other people to maintain your self-control, which is the opposite of what self-control is. The Bible says that one of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control.
Right.
And the spirit of the Spirit himself is the Spirit of truth. So it's truth in you that gives you the power to not lust after somebody, not the way somebody dresses. So that mentality where you put your power onto the way people dress is literally relying on outward stimuluses to control you, which is exactly what the entire world does and why they have the problems they do. But here we are as little kids hearing it in the church from adult men who are supposed to be teaching us the truth.
Yeah.
And so we go out having absolutely no self-control.
Yeah.
Worse than the world, because we hear the world is evil, so evil, and then we go out and go, oh, this isn't so bad, and then you slip into everything they do, but then you outdo them. That's what I found. It's like I ended up outdoing all the people that were not from the church, you know what I mean? I did things that they wouldn't be willing to do, because I had my will was broken. Instead of being taught what was the will of God and having a strong will in righteousness, it was like, don't have any will, just do whatever I say.
Yeah, the more I think about that upbringing, it was a bunch of men who very clearly, looking back, had emotional problems. They were damaged individuals from their childhoods, that whole boomer generation. There's so many damaged people. And so that creates emotional, heart problems. They don't really know how to love people, and they weren't transformed. So you had a bunch of grown men who were saying things like what you just said, hating on gay people, trans, whatever, all that kind of whole culture, and like being very vocal about it. And that's not the heart of God at all. It's like what that person said to you about these girls dressing like sluts. I mean, that's just, that's so messed up to say to young men. Like, that's not how you're supposed to look at people. Right. Even if you thought that, that thought shouldn't even really cross your mind. But exactly. Like, that's a heart problem.
Exactly. So. And to what you just said, like, the fact that these men were so wounded and emotionally wounded and scarred and have these problems and trauma, etc., that's okay. Everybody has that. You know what I mean?
But they hid it.
That's my point. It's like there is an answer.
Yes.
God has the actual answer to that. And it just seemed like they were dancing around that answer.
Trying to change the
avoiding
outward.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what everybody's trying to do. You're never going to get there with that. That's what people do with drugs. They're trying to change the outward instead of actually facing God. And to their credit, to an extent, they were trying to do that. They just didn't really know how because they got caught up in the kind of like popular kid mentality where it's like, I'm a leader and I know how to lead you guys and I'm going to do this, instead of like, the verse that says God upholds all things by the word of his power. And there's another verse that says, like, God humbles himself to see the children of man. It's like God himself is humble. God himself holds things up. And that verse to me has taught me so much about holding other people up. And that's what they needed to do. They needed to be under people, not above them, oppressing them like the world does. Jesus even said, the world is going to use dominion and exercise dominion. He's like, it will not be so with you. The greatest of you will be the least. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I run into people, and I don't want to bash anybody, because really it is like they don't understand how they're doing things. They can't self-reflect. It's so common
Have a lot
with
of grace
damaged
for them.
people.
I understand.
They can't look inward really. It's so, but like it's just so, it's such a like aroma of narcissism. It just,
Right.
and it's just like, oh, it's such a bad taste in their mouth.
And it's to be expected, because that is exactly like what is so attractive to the flesh. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to really get the word of God in you in a way, and really like press into God in a way where you're not seeking things for yourself in a way. You're actually trying to find God and the heart of God. And then he'll give it to you. Even so, he's like, you seek and you'll find, ask and it'll be given to you, etc.
Yep.
So yeah,
moving on.
I understand those people. I have sympathy and
Yep.
empathy and mercy and grace for them. I understand, because I have also made all the same mistakes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that is just like the core of what gave me the type of questions that I had going into the world. And the obsession with the outward feeling and numbing the real need for God with outward things is what makes us turn to things like drugs or sex or anything. You know, it could be school, could be knowledge, you know, you name it. The whole earth is giving you all these options to try and fill the void. And, you know, they say that typical saying, like, you've got a Jesus-shaped hole in your heart and only Jesus can fill it. But
yeah. So what are the things you started doing to, you know, I know for me it was, and part of it was, well, I don't need to get into all that, but like, I guess just, you know, you were told, oh, this is so evil and bad. There was a lack of honesty. Really, a lot of these things are drugs and things, sex are very enjoyable, you know, so they try to tell their kids, don't do that. It's evil. It's, you know, stay away from it. And then you start doing those things and you're like, actually, this is
great. You're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's like a number of things. One of the things is meeting people outside of the church and realizing that these people accept me way more than people in the church. They're way nicer, kinder, more accepting, more loving.
Yeah.
So when you see that, you're
And
like,
it's that church specifically though. It's not all right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But like when you start seeing that, you start thinking, oh wow, those people were not being honest. You know what I mean? And you start thinking exactly what you're supposed to think about the church, which is, oh, these people have something that those people didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's supposed to be opposite. You're supposed to be the one who has so much Jesus in you that people go, oh my God, they have something that I don't. And maybe to an extent that's my own fault, because I did rebel a lot against what was going on there. Like I threw out the baby with the bathwater for sure. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I definitely started going towards drugs and sex, and I went to college and started, you know, becoming more of an atheist and believing the type of science that I was being fed and all this stuff. And eventually I just got like in trouble. I started partying all the time with my friends and started chasing girls and doing all this stuff. And one thing led to another. It was a slow incremental giving myself away type of thing, like it always is for us, you know, like the metaphor for like quicksand and all that stuff. But I eventually ended up in New York City trying to be like a model, you know, and just chasing this whole like lifestyle of like hedonism and self-pleasure and trying not to work for money but make tons of money anyway. And
Right.
so the more I chased that lifestyle, the more I realized, like, oh, I could sell drugs or sell myself, or, you know, like get as many girls as possible and try all these drugs. And I never really got into like addictive drugs, thank God, like really addictive drugs, you know what I mean? I mean, I tried them a couple times, but I remember when I did, like the opiates and stuff, I started thinking about them all day. And thank God I did have God kind of like
Yeah.
following me the whole time because I immediately thought like, this is trouble. I'm never touching that again. I never did. And on top of that, I have to say, in my childhood, I did have real miraculous things happen that I kind of forgot about. Like I would pray for certain people. Like I prayed for my mom when I was young, and I had my hands on her, and I just said, "In the name of Jesus," after my prayer, and I felt like this power go through my whole body, absolutely crazy, and I could feel inside of her whole body for a second, and she was like immediately healed of whatever sickness she had.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was like a mind-blowing experience for me, but I was so little, I just kind of like forgot about it, you know what I mean? And then I would have weird experiences, like I would ask God like where a toy was or something, and I would literally hear his voice be like, "Oh, go this way, turn right, look in the bottom of this basket," and I would dig, it would be right there. Like weird little things like that, or I would ask for things that I wanted, like, "Oh God, I really want to go snowboarding," and like my friend called me the next day and was like, "Oh, I got free tickets to go snowboarding, you want to come?" I was like, "Oh yeah."
That's cool.
Yeah, and on top of that, I never got away with anything. Like if I ever did anything wrong, God would basically spank me. So like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my point in that was when I finally was in New York City, I was doing all these drugs, and after a while it started becoming experimental. So I would like try mushrooms, and it became this spiritual thing where I was almost like, oh my God, like these experiences I'm having make it feel like there really is a spirit realm, because you can feel all these things.
Sure.
And when I started doing that, I started remembering Bible verses that made sense with the experiences that I was having. And I was like, wait a minute, there must be something to this. We were just taught it in a weird way, or like I didn't get it like that, you know what I mean? And so I started going down this trail of like doing hallucinogenics and yoga, and I started reading all these different religious texts, like all of them. I read like the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran, and I read these 5 books that are part of the Hindu religion. I can't remember what they're called.
And I've tried,
And all these different
Yeah.
things with the mantras and everything. And I read the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And there's all these stories in the Hindu ones about these guys who could do all these crazy things, like sort of in the Bible, but it was kind of like more like the Egyptians who could do, you know,
Yeah,
sorcery
sorcery,
type stuff. And I started to see the patterns. Like and then I started reading the Bible like every day, just because I was curious.
Right.
And the more I read it, the more my mind was blown, and it started like changing something in me. So I'm sitting here trying hallucinogenic drugs like every day. I'm sitting here like doing Molly every day, meditating, doing yoga, reading all these religious books, and I started like selling tons and tons of weed to like 14 pounds of weed would come in the mail to my house, and then I would go sell it. And so I ended up living in this big penthouse in the financial district a couple blocks away from Wall Street.
Okay.
So I had this like material success.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I was, right before that, I was doing these catering parties because it was just one of my jobs. And I would go to these parties where like the ultra rich, the wealthiest people in the world were. Like Trump was at one of these parties, and Sarah Jessica Parker, and all these like celebrities were at these things. And I just remember sitting there and watching these people interact, and I could feel that like there was just like such an emptiness to it. And I was like, this is what we're all chasing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I started having these deep revelations about the emptiness of the world and how we're all trying to reach this pinnacle. Everyone's competing for the same thing. They get really good at it, because I was like obsessing over like communication and manipulation, getting what I wanted, and like talking to people in a certain way to connect with them and make them feel a certain way so I could get more girls or have power and all these things. And that's what fascinated me. But the more I knew about it, and the more I got it, and the more wealth I got, and the less I had to work, and the more freedom I had, I started getting these weird prideful feelings like, oh, I'm a god, like I'm free, and you guys are all slaves to the system.
Yeah.
You guys are all chasing this thing, but you're all like slaves to your own mind. And yet I was still a slave, probably worse than ever. But I didn't realize it, because I was like, oh man, I know all this stuff about spirituality. And I was fooling around with it. I could like feel energy, and I was like going outside my body and doing all these crazy things.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Molly definitely does that too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
You feel like you're Superman.
Exactly. So Molly, shrooms, her mushrooms, and LSD, I was experimenting with all those, and they would give me different spiritual like abilities. Like I could feel crazy things, and And then I started realizing like you could just imagine these feelings without the drugs. And I started experimenting with that. I would like literally imagine how ecstasy felt, and I could feel it in my whole body. I was like controlling it, and I was like, wow, I had powers, you know what I mean? It was foolishness,
Right.
but the point was it kind of awakened me to understand that there was a spirit world. And so I went from being an atheist to suddenly like, oh man, there's a spirit world. And then I realized, oh man, if there's a spirit world, there must be a hierarchy of spirits. And there must be one at the top, and that one must be God. So I was just kind of like, okay, so there's a God. I didn't know what that meant until I did something. I experimented with a drug called DMT, and I do not recommend this to anyone.
I never tried that one.
It was the most devastating and awakening experience I've ever had in my life to this day.
Wow.
Other than salvation itself. So right before I say it, it's like I was reading the Bible every day. So I was realizing that this was like a book of deep wisdom. Number 2, I realized the world was completely empty. Number 3, I started remembering the love of my parents, selfless love that had nothing to do with the competitive lifestyle and love that everyone around me was giving me. That it was like, I'll love you only in exchange for something. I want to get something over on you. I'm always going to negotiate love. There was no substance to that love, and it felt so empty. Okay. So I just want to say that because then I tried DMT. So I'm with my friends and I do this drug called DMT. You just like smoke it or whatever. All of a sudden, I feel this crazy feeling. It feels kind of amazing at first. And I feel everything in the room. I can feel sound waves coming out of a speaker. And it's like bouncing off the walls, and I can feel it reaching every corner and crisscrossing, going through my body. I could feel everyone's thoughts in the room. I couldn't process it. I couldn't like tell you all their thoughts unless I focused on it, but I could like feel inside their bodies like I was them. It felt like I was one with everything. And my thoughts were like, so if we can do this, there's something blocking us from this, like some kind of impurity or something. I don't know. I had all these thoughts about it. Like maybe we're supposed to feel like this. Maybe, we've lost it over time. But then all of a sudden, I was like thrown or dropped or something into this like hell realm, just like absolute soul-sucking blackness, like being torn apart in every direction. It felt like I could only feel the outside of my skin, and on the inside was like less than nothing. It was like darker than dark, emptier than empty, scarier than scary, like the most terrifying, horrible, empty, nothing feeling inside, but also like felt like chaos being whipped in every direction. And I'm like, I had just started believing there was a God, and I started crying out. So I'm like, God, I know you're real. Like, I didn't mean to do this. Like,
Whoops.
Please help me. I'm like, I felt like I was going to be there forever. I felt stuck, you know what I mean? Oh my God, please, like, I didn't mean to do this. I'm so sorry. Please help me, right? All of a sudden, I hear what the Bible describes as a still small voice. It was like behind everything, like way, I can't even explain to you how perfectly the still small voice describes what I was experiencing. Like it was not in me. It was like behind me somehow, but like inside, like deeper than deep. And he goes, yes, this is God. And he goes, this is waiting for you on the end of the path you are on. And I was like, you know what I mean? So this like showing me like, this is the abyss.
Oh.
This is what they call outer darkness in the Bible. You know?
Yeah.
And so he said a couple other things that were just like amazing. He was like, look around the room. I looked around the room and I see my friends up there. And he goes, these people are all sent to you by the devil to destroy your life. At that time, I didn't believe in the devil. I didn't know for a fact that there was a devil or anything. And here's this still small voice telling me that, the devil is real and these people are set to destroy my life. And then I had to change my life, basically. So as soon as I look around the room, I see these entities like on these people, controlling them. And they're like looking at me through their eyes. Like, this sounds mental, but like I could see it. And I could hear them communicating with each other. And they said, uh-oh, he knows. Isn't that crazy? I was like, and like my world was shattered. I was like, I felt so tiny and like so
Yeah,
scared.
you were
It
like
felt like this
You probably
conspiracy
just felt
against me.
like a little pawn in the game.
100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt. And it was terrifying. I was like, oh my God. And he said some other beautiful things too. I think he said something about Jesus, like Jesus is real and he's the only way or something like that. And then I couldn't see this, but it was like I got this impression that he reached his hand out and like pulled me out of it. And suddenly the whole trip just went away and I just had like perfect peace.
Wow.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
That's crazy.
It was unbelievable.